Now I want to go on a rant, and the rant has to do with ID3 tagging. Look out, sexy topic incoming. The bottom line is you should be verifying the features that are promised to you. Verify that they are working even if you don't typically use them, because I have been relying on a feature for years. I never verified it, and it has never been working. So I look like an absolute idiot. Let me walk you through this. You should be ID3 tagging every single one of your podcast's audio files. For years, when I consume a podcast, I consumed it via the Overcast app or Apple Podcasts. How is the data for those podcast episodes populated? From the RSS feed. Everything is good, great, grand because my RSS feed is full. All of the data is there, all of the artwork is there, and those podcast apps, those podcatchers, populated it correctly. The issue arises when you do not have a podcast player or a podcast app that populates data from the RSS feed. I recently went down a rabbit hole trying to cut a few more cords to avoid distractions and get devices that are for dedicated things. That led to me picking up a SanDisk MP3 player, a little nugget right there. It is a little fella, and it does not have any connectivity, any Wi-Fi, so you have to download an MP3 file and drag it onto an SD card to listen to a show on this MP3 player. And there is the issue. When a show does not have ID3 tags, it would get lumped into a folder that says unknown show. And unless the audio file is titled descriptively, you don't know what you're about to listen to. And I noticed, hey, my show is filed in the unknown folder. What gives? So I emailed Libsyn support because I host my audio on Libsyn. Turns out, they do not ID3 tag M4A files. I use M4A, which if I'm remembering correctly is an AAC audio format, because it sounds better at lower bit rates. I was able to encode my stereo file at 128 kilobits per second. Sounded great. But unfortunately, their system doesn't encode ID3 tags onto M4A files. It does for MP3 files. So I had to come up with a solution here so that when I am putting an MP3 file, or when anybody is downloading an MP3 file and maybe somebody comes across it years down the road, they know what the show is. The solution that I came up with is an application called Forecast. I already mentioned Overcast, which is coded and designed and made by Marco Arment. I hope I pronounced that right. Well, he also produced an app called Forecast. What that allows you to do is drop in a WAV file, add your artwork, add your podcast title, the episode title, all of that information, encode it into an MP3, and now the ID3 tags are baked in. There's an added benefit, though, and I am very excited about this because this issue that I ran into led me to adding a new feature to this podcast. It's super cool because I do it for the videos already. Timestamps, chapter markers. The Forecast app, which unfortunately is only available for Mac, has chapter markers, so I can put chapter markers into my MP3 file. Now, that's not going to be functional for players like this SanDisk because they don't have chapter marker support, but on iPods, because yes, I am using an iPod still, or now, or on Overcast or Apple Podcasts, if they have the chapter marker functionality enabled, you can see that. So the entire purpose of me sharing this is twofold. If you are listening to this in a podcatcher, enjoy the chapter markers. You can just hit the forward arrow if you don't care what I'm talking about. Secondly, you should be verifying the features that you are promised, because sometimes there may be some kind of technical issue that leads to those features not working. Maybe there's an issue with the file format that you're uploading. Maybe there's an issue with the system that they need to fix. So verify they're working. And when there's an issue, it doesn't always mean it's a bad thing, because it could lead to some cool new discoveries. That is my rant. I did have to up, one little side note, I did have to up not the sample rate. Why can't I think? I just said this word. I had to jump up from 128 kilobits per second to 160 kilobits per second for the MP3 to get the same audio quality. It's amazing how much worse the MP3 file sounded. So it may be a larger file size podcast. I apologize for that, but I want the audio quality to still be there.